Radio Reading Service now presents a serialized reading of the book Merry Christmas, the Treasury of Songs and Stories. The book was published in 2002 by Publications International and is 264 pages long. Today's reading, episode number 1, begins on page 7, and your reader is Dick Schultz. God has promised to send His Son to earth to be the world's Savior. When the time was right, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth. There was a young maiden named Mary who lived there. Mary was engaged to wed Joseph, a carpenter. The angel appeared to Mary and said, "Rejoice, the Lord is with you. Do not be afraid, Mary. God has greatly blessed you. You are going to have a baby, and you will name him Jesus. He will be the Son of God, and His kingdom will never end." Joseph was worried about Mary having a baby that was not his. And then the angel Gabriel appeared to Joseph in a dream, and he told Joseph about Mary's holy child. And Joseph understood. He then wed Mary and took care of her. Some months later, Rome's emperor announced that everyone in the land had to be counted. Men had to return to their hometown, and there they would tell their name and what land they owned. Joseph belonged to the family line of David. King David's birthplace was Bethlehem. So it was that Joseph left Nazareth in Galilee and set out for the distant town of Bethlehem in Judea. Joseph's young wife, Mary, went with him. She was nearing the time when she would give birth. It was a long and difficult journey, and even though Mary rode the donkey while Joseph walked, she was weary. Her spirits lifted when they came to fields where the sheep were grazing. And then the little town of Bethlehem came into view. Night was falling when Joseph and Mary arrived in Bethlehem. Cattle were being led to the stables outside the town, and the lamps were lit in the houses and the inns. Joseph and Mary knocked on the door of the first inn and waited. After what seemed like a long time, the innkeeper came to the door with his lantern. The innkeeper told Joseph that he had no rooms left. Joseph and Mary tried several inns, but none of them had any rooms because so many people were staying in Bethlehem. Finally, one innkeeper noticed that Mary was heavy with child. The innkeeper told Joseph and Mary that they could spend the night in his stable with the animals. And that night in the stable, Mary gave birth to her baby, the Son of God. Mary wrapped the babe in light swaddling cloths and laid him in a manger. Mary and Joseph then named the baby Jesus. The manger was filled with soft, clean hay, intended to feed the cattle, but this was the first bed for the infant Jesus. Mary rested near the manger with her newborn, while her newborn son slept peacefully, and Joseph sat quietly beside her. The gentle animals in the stable crowded near the infant. Their sweet breath warmed the family. Outside in the dark night sky, a bright new star appeared in the east. This was a very special star, and it shone like no other star in the sky. It has become to be known as the Star of Bethlehem. In the fields outside the town, the shepherds were keeping watch over their sheep through the night. Suddenly there was a great light, and an angel of the Lord appeared before them. The shepherds were very much afraid. The angel spoke to the shepherds, saying, "Fear not, for I bring you wonderful news. It will bring great joy to all the world. For there is born to you this night in Bethlehem a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this is how you will know him. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling cloths, lying in a manger." And then, all at once, many angels appeared in the sky. And the angels sang praises. "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace and goodwill toward all people." The shepherds said to one another, "Let us go to this baby that God's angels have told us about." The shepherds hurried to Bethlehem through the bright and starlit night. Soon they found Mary and Joseph resting in a stable and the baby Jesus wrapped in swaddling clothes, asleep in the manger. Back at their fields, they told everyone that they had seen the Savior, and all who heard were very amazed. In the land far to the east, there lived 3 wise men, Gaspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. On the night of Jesus' birth, the wise men saw a bright new star in the heavens. They knew that the star was a sign that the Savior had been born. They learned that Bethlehem was the birthplace. So they decided that they must go worship the newborn king. They gathered gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and set off on their long journey. The three wise men traveled the long road to Bethlehem by camel caravan with their gifts for baby Jesus. To their great joy and wonder, the same bright star that they had first seen in the east went ahead of them. Its light guided them on their long journey. The star's ever-present glow led them over the hills and across the valleys. The wise men followed that star westward until they reached Bethlehem. Then the Star of Bethlehem seemed to stand still. It streamed its light down on a small stable. The wise men knew that this must be where the infant Jesus lay, and so they approached the stable. It had been a long journey, but the wise men had finally reached their destination. They came to the place the star was shining on, and inside the stable they saw the mother and the baby, and gazing on the child, the wise men fell to their knees and worshipped the infant. Then they opened the treasures that they had brought from the east. They presented the baby Jesus with the rare gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and then they thanked God for showing them the way. Soon others came from all over the land to worship the newborn Son of God. They knew that he was a very wonderful child, and the day he was born would always be remembered as a very special day throughout time. Mary looked lovingly at her child. She thought about how the Lord had blessed her, and in her heart she praised the Lord, and her spirit rejoiced. From then on, the day that baby Jesus was born would be known as Christmas Day, and the world would celebrate. This story is entitled, Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus. In 1897, 8-year-old Virginia O'Hanlon asked the question, Is there a Santa Claus? She wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Sun requesting an honest reply, and this is what her letter said. Dear Editor, I am 8 years old. Some of my little friends say that there is no Santa Claus. Papa says, if you see it in the sun, it is so. Please tell me the truth. Is there a Santa Claus? Signed, Virginia O'Hanlon, 115 West 95th Street. Francis P. Church was an editor for the Sun. He received little Virginia's letter and wrote the following reply, and it was printed in the September 21st, 1897 edition of the New York Sun. Virginia, your little friends are wrong. They have been affected by the skepticism of a skeptical age. They do not believe except by what they see. They think that nothing can be which is not comprehensible by their little minds. All minds, Virginia, whether they be men's or children's, are little. In this great universe of ours, man is a mere insect, an ant, in his intellect, as compared with the boundless world about him, as measured by the intelligence capable of grasping the whole of truth and knowledge. Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus. He exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist. And you know that they abound and give to your life its highest beauty and joy. Alas, how dreary would be the world if there were no Santa Claus. It would be as dreary as if there were no Virginias. There would be no childlike faith then, no poetry, no romance to make tolerable this existence. We should have no enjoyment except in sense and sight. The eternal light with which childhood fills the world would be extinguished. Not believe in Santa Claus? You might as well not believe in fairies. You might get your papa to hire men to watch in all the chimneys on Christmas Eve to catch Santa Claus coming down, but what would that prove? Nobody sees Santa Claus. The most real things in the world are those that neither children nor men can see. Did you ever see fairies dancing on a lawn? Of course not, but there's no proof that they are not there. Nobody can conceive or imagine all of the wonders there are that are unseen and unseeable in the world. You tear apart a baby's rattle and you see what makes the noise inside, but there is a veil covering the unseen world which not even the strongest man or the united strength of all the strongest men that ever lived could tear apart. Only faith, fancy, poetry, love, and romance can push aside that curtain and view and picture the supernal beauty and glory beyond. Is it all real? Ah, Virginia, in this world there is nothing else real and abiding. No Santa Claus? Thank God he lives and lives forever. 1,000 years from now, Virginia, he will continue to make glad the heart of childhood. And then this story, the meaning of Christmas. Santa looked at the line of children waiting to see him. Christmas means so much to the kids, he said. And one by one the children sat on Santa's lap. One by one they told Santa what they wanted for Christmas. Each child had a longer list than the child before. Santa listened as the children asked for more and bigger presents. Oh dear, thought Santa. Have I been too busy making lists and building toys? Did I let the kids forget the true meaning of Christmas? Santa then began asking each child, what do you think Christmas is all about? Presents, of course, said Jeff. Vacation from school, said Amanda. Cookies, said Ross, with frosting. Nate was last in line. He scrambled up onto Santa's lap. Santa looked at the long list that Nate had in his hand and sighed. Nate smoothed out his list and began reading. First of all, said Nate, I need garden tools, and there's a very good reason why. Santa barely listened to Nate as he read his list. He was too sad and too worried. He was sad that the kids didn't remember the meaning of Christmas. He was worried that he had been too busy to help them remember. He heard Nate say something about a music box, a barbecue grill, and dog biscuits. Santa sat up straight. Dog biscuits? Yes, said Nate, the flavored kind. Santa shook his head. If that's what you want. He gave Nate a candy cane and sent him on his way. And Santa didn't ask Nate why he wanted dog biscuits. He didn't ask Nate what he thought Christmas really meant either. Christmas Eve arrived, and Santa was running late. His bag was so heavy that it bogged down the sleigh. It was so bulky that Santa could barely get it down the chimneys. It's the toys, Santa told Blitzen. There are more toys this year than ever before. And by the time Santa reached Nate's house, it was almost midnight, and Nate was already fast asleep. It's almost Christmas Day, Santa told Blitzen, and I haven't found anybody who knows what Christmas is all about. The sleigh landed on Nate's roof. Santa checked to make sure that all of Nate's gifts were in his bag. Nate asked for some peculiar gifts this year, he said. Garden tools, a music box, a barbecue grill, and dog biscuits. Santa heaved his bulging bag over his shoulder. I've really let the kids down, he told Blitzen. They think Christmas is what I carry in this bag, and it's my fault. Blitzen snorted and stamped his hooves on the snow-covered roof. Snort all you like. It's true, Santa said. But wish me luck, Santa said. You know what happened at the Murphy house. Santa grabbed his bag firmly, climbed into the chimney, and slid down. Halfway to the bottom, Santa's bulging bag skidded to a stop, and Santa and the toys were stuck. Oh dear, said Santa. I was afraid of this. Santa tugged at the bag. It slid free. Santa landed with a thud in the fireplace. Just like the Murphy house, he mumbled as he brushed soot off his jacket. Santa set about his business, leaving gifts for Nate and his family. He pulled the first gift from his bag. I can't imagine what Nate wants with garden tools, and still, it's what he asked for. Santa consulted his list. Oh my, Santa blinked. Nate doesn't want these tools for himself, they're for his mother. Santa scratched his head. He thought back to the day that Nate had come to sit on his lap. He tried to remember what Nate had said. Nate told me his mother loves her garden, but her old tools are rusty. Ho, ho, ho! I should have paid closer attention. Santa studied his list even closer. And the music box, that's for his sister. And the barbecue grill is for his dad. Nate wanted to make sure his family got exactly what they wanted. He even remembered dog biscuits for his dog. Well, I won't let them down. Santa bounded about the room, leaving gifts and filling stockings. When he reached Nate's stocking, he found that something was already inside. It was a small wrapped package with a little tag and a green bow, and the tag said, "To Santa." Santa opened the gift. It was a pair of earmuffs. Underneath it was a note. "Dear Santa, you asked me what Christmas is all about. Jeff said Christmas is about presents, and he's right. I make my family happy when I give them a gift that they really want. Amanda said Christmas is about vacation, and she's right, too. During the Christmas break, my family has come to decorate our tree and bake cookies, and that means that Ross was right, too. Christmas is about cookies. But mostly, I think, Christmas is about believing in things you love, even when they're hard to see, like you. Love, Nate. P.S. I hope you like the earmuffs. I don't want you to get sick. Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without you." So Santa read the letter twice. "Nate's right," he said. "Christmas is about believing in the things you love. The kids didn't forget that, but I did. I stopped believing in the kids." And as Santa turned to leave, he saw the time on the mantel clock. Midnight had passed. It was now officially Christmas Day. Well, it's Christmas, and I finally found somebody who remembers the true meaning of Christmas, Santa said, and donning his earmuffs, little Nate and me too. Santa patted his new earmuffs and put in a little something extra in Nate's stocking. It turned out that he didn't let the children down after all. The Christmas Miracle. Once upon a time there lived a poor Dutch baker. He never had enough money to buy food, and each winter the baker's problems got worse. When the temperature fell, people stayed home and didn't buy bread. One December night the wind was blowing strong and not a single person had come in that day. "What will I do?" the baker muttered. It was getting late, so he locked the bakery door. The baker walked off into the cold, gray afternoon. Every day the baker skated along an icy canal to get to the bakery. "I will carry the leftover bread home to my wife," he thought. He knew she would be disappointed with the sales of the bakery, but she would take the bread and make the best of it. He walked slowly to the frozen canal, with his teeth chattering all the way. When he got to the canal, the baker could see the farmer coming toward him. The farmer didn't have much luck in the market either. He had hoped to sell the apples from his tiny orchard, but by the end of the day he had sold only 10. He had to bring his sack full of apples home so that they wouldn't go bad in the frost. And this made him sad. He needed guilders, small Dutch coins, to buy medicine for his daughter, who was very sick. The two men greeted each other quietly and began skating together. Their skates soon fell into a rhythm. Before long, another man appeared on the canal. As he skated toward the baker and the farmer, he thought about his long day. The new skater was a talented weaver, on his way home from the marketplace, too. He made warm blankets and pretty coats. But no one could buy the weaver's goods. Most people in a small Dutch town made with what they had. They rarely bought anything new. The weaver had wanted to make enough to buy his old father, the lemon tea that he liked so much, but all the weaver had was blankets. And like the other two men, he had no money. "It will be wonderful to get out of this chill," said the weaver, trying to start some cheerful conversation. But the other two men just nodded their heads in agreement. Their thick scarves and the biting wind made it hard to talk to one another, so they continued along the canal in silence. A cold and sharp blast of wind hit the men as they skated, so they lowered their heads to protect themselves from the cold. They listened to the wind blowing through the trees on the side of the canal. The whining of the wind seemed to get louder and louder. and it became so strong that it sounded like a baby crying. The farmer saw an old deserted stable in the distance. He had fond memories of playing there when he was a little boy, but that was many, many years ago, and now the stable was in ruins. The farmer realized that the crying sound was not the wind, and it was coming from inside the stable. That can't be, he thought out loud. No one has been in that stable for years. That sounds like a child, said the baker. Without another word, the three men stepped off the ice and into the snow. As they reached the door, they could hear the baby's cries beginning to soften, and soon they heard the gentle sound of a mother's voice singing a soulful lullaby. The men pushed the door aside and looked in, and they couldn't believe their eyes. A young woman sat on the floor holding a baby boy in her arms. She stopped singing as she looked up at the men, and then she smiled. It had been the baby making the noise and not the wind. The man that sat next to them on a crate. He held his head in his hands, looking very sad. "What are you doing here?" asked the baker. There's no place for my family. It is much too cold. You can't stay here." "We are traveling through Amsterdam on our way to visit relatives," the man replied, "and it got so cold and dark that we had to find shelter." The farmer turned to look at the young woman and the baby, who was now fast asleep. "What will you eat?" the farmer asked. When he looked at the peaceful boy, he immediately thought of his sick daughter at home. She had looked so fragile and so tiny when he had left her that morning. "We have nothing," replied the young man, and he started raking the hay together to make a bed. "Here," the baker exclaimed suddenly, "take these loaves of bread. It's not much, but you need it more than I do." One by one the men took their sacks and emptied them in front of the women and the child. They stacked the bread, the apples, and the blankets in neat piles on the floor. The family looked at the men in awe. "My prayers have been answered," cried the woman. "Our son was so hungry and cold. We will not forget your kindness, but we can never repay you. We are very poor." We understand," replied the men. During the short time the men were in the stable, the wind had died down, and a light snow began to fall. But each man felt a warm feeling inside. Their thoughts and their bags did not weigh them down any more, so they left the barn and skated down the canal. Each man smiled because they knew they would be home soon. "Maybe our luck will be better tomorrow at the marketplace," said the baker. But the men's luck would change sooner than tomorrow. As they skated toward home, the men felt the sacks on their bags getting heavier, as if they were filling up. "The snow must be falling very hard," each man thought. "I can feel it falling into my bag." When the baker reached his house and left the others, they saw that his bag was fat and bulging. "Merry Christmas," he said to his new friends. The farmer and the weaver waved back at him as he walked back towards his house. And then the baker removed his skates and trudged through the heavy snow. When he arrived home, he opened his front door, and only then did he see that his bag was bulging, not with snow, as he had first thought. The bag was bursting with gold coins and food of all sorts. There was even a silk scarf for his wife and toys for the children. "My, the market must have been very busy today," said the baker's wife. "How can we afford all of these wonderful gifts?" The baker could not explain the wonderful gifts. He just shook his head and said, "I guess we deserve them, dear." That night the baker and his family had the best dinner ever. When it was time for bed, the baker gathered the children in front of the fire and told them about the amazing story of the family in the old barn. After he put his family to bed with full bellies, the baker sat up and looked out the window. And at that moment, the baker knew that when his friends got home, they had found that their bags were filled with gifts too. And they did. When the farmer reached his house, he turned to the weaver and said, "I hope we will meet again on the canal." "Merry Christmas," said the weaver. The farmer went into the house, and then he realized why his bag felt so full. It held many guilders and enough medicine to cure his sick daughter. The weaver found the same fortune upon his return home. His bag was full of the lemon tea that his father loved so much. For their kindness, the baker, the weaver, and the farmer had found much, much more than good luck. They had found a miracle. A Christmas Carol. Ebenezer Scrooge hunched over his account books. Scrooge's clerk, Bob Cratchit, huddled at his own desk. The front door burst open, and a blast of December air whipped through the room. "Merry Christmas, Uncle," said Scrooge's nephew. "Christmas," muttered Scrooge. "Bah! Humbug!" "You didn't mean that, Uncle," said his nephew. "Why don't you close early today?" "And become like other Christmas fools, buying gifts that I can't afford?" said Scrooge. "No, thank you." "Suit yourself," said his nephew, "but I hope you'll at least stop by for Christmas dinner tomorrow." When his nephew opened the door, another gust of wind burst into the office, and with it came the sound of carolers singing. Scrooge banged his window open. "You!" he shouted at the carolers. One of the carolers stopped singing and stared up at Scrooge. "Find another street corner," Scrooge snarled, and he banged the window shut. "Sir," said Bob Cratchit, tapping on Scrooge's door, "I've filed the paperwork." "Fine," said Scrooge. "You may leave." "Mr. Scrooge," said Cratchit, "tomorrow's Christmas, a day to spend with the family." "Christmas? Bah!" Scrooge shook his head. "Fine. Take tomorrow off, but be here early the next day." Cratchit was very happy as he rushed out the door. "Fool!" Scrooge scowled. As darkness fell and Scrooge closed the last account book, it was time to go home. And as he locked the door, he glanced at the sign above, and it read, "The Firm of Scrooge and Marley." "Jacob Marley," said Scrooge, "a man who knew the value of a day's work. Too bad he's gone." Scrooge trudged on home, climbed the steps to his bedroom, and then fell asleep. Clank! "What was that?" said Scrooge. He listened carefully, but heard nothing. Perhaps I'm dreaming," he muttered. Clank! Scrooge sat up straight in his bed. "No, it isn't a dream," said a voice that echoed through Scrooge's bedroom. A man, pale and ghostly, drifted into the room. Scrooge stared at him. "Marley? Jacob Marley? How can that be? You're—" "Dead," the ghost said, "and paying for my sins." Scrooge frowned. "But you were a fine businessman." "Business? Ha!" said Marley's ghost as he shivered. "I never learned the value of love and charity, and now I wander the earth, unable to find peace." "I don't understand, Jacob," Scrooge whispered. "The same fate awaits you," the ghost said, "unless you change your ways. 3 spirits will visit you. The first will arrive when the clock strikes 1. The ghost suddenly vanished, and Scrooge pulled the covers over his head. Bong! The clock struck 1. "Ebenezer Scrooge?" Scrooge peeked out at a woman standing beside his bed. "Who are you?" whispered Scrooge. "I am the ghost of Christmas past," said the ghost as she motioned toward the door. Scrooge followed the ghost. The room began to dissolve, and soon he was staring into the window of another room. "This house," said Scrooge. "It seems familiar. Why, it's the house that I grew up in." "Yes," the ghost nodded. "And the boy? Is he familiar too?" Scrooge peered through the window. A small boy sat alone in a corner reading a book. Scrooge's eyes grew wide. "It's me as a child. But why is he sitting all by himself?" Scrooge stared at the boy. "Your parents are at work," said the ghost. Scrooge studied the boy. He looked well-dressed, but his eyes were very sad. "We have many places to visit," said the ghost. "Come." The small dark house faded away, and in its place stood a bright office filled with workers. "I know this office," said Scrooge. Scrooge pointed to a man carrying a platter of roast beef into the office. "That's Mr. Fezziwig," he says. Mrs. Fezziwig followed with a tray of pastries. "Stop your work," Mr. Fezziwig told the office clerks. "It's Christmas Eve." A fiddler began playing, and Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig danced a lively jig around the office. The ghost of Christmas past glanced at Scrooge. "This certainly isn't the firm of Scrooge and Marley, is it? Do you recognize the clerk in the corner?" And Scrooge stared at the young man. "It's me," he said. The young Scrooge laughed and clapped to the music. His eyes were bright, so very different from Scrooge's own clerk, Bob Cratchit, who had huddled in the cold the night before. "I hope this party never ends," young Scrooge called out. "Let's stay and dance forever." Old Scrooge then thought about Cratchit, who had run from the office on Christmas Eve. "Cratchit couldn't wait to get away from me," he said. The music faded. Fezziwig's office dissolved into darkness. "We have one more stop," said the ghost, "and our time is running out." The ghost waved her arms, and Scrooge saw his younger self again, sitting in the garden beside a lovely young woman. The woman's eyes filled with tears as she said, "I can't marry you, Ebenezer. There's something you love more than me." "Nonsense," said the young Ebenezer. The woman dabbed her eyes with her handkerchief. "You love money. You love it more than anything." And then the woman ran from the garden. Old Scrooge and the ghost followed her. Scrooge could see that she was now a few years older. She was in a parlor that had been decorated for Christmas. Children laughed and played at her feet. A little girl threw her arms about her. You have made her happy," the ghost said. "Take me home," Scrooge said. "I can't bear to see this." Bong, bong. The clock struck 2. Scrooge was back in his own bed. "Thank goodness," he said, "it was a dream." "No, Ebenezer, it wasn't a dream." A man stared down at Scrooge. "I am the ghost of Christmas Present," he said. "I have much to show you. Grab onto my robe." Scrooge touched the spirit's robe, and then the bedroom vanished, and Scrooge found himself on a busy street. The dark of night was gone. Men and women bustled along the sidewalks. Children laughed and skipped at their sides. "Everyone looks so happy," grumbled Scrooge. "Of course they do," said the ghost. "It's Christmas." Scrooge simply shook his head. "You mean they all woke up happy just because it's December the 25th? And the ghost smiled. "Yes, today they can forget their troubles and simply enjoy their families. When was the last time you stopped and enjoyed the moment? Try it now. Close your eyes." Scrooge frowned, but he closed his eyes. The aroma of freshly baked bread mingled in the crisp morning air. Horses clip-clopped over the cobblestone street. An icy snowflake tickled his tongue, and his mouth stretched open into a wide smile. The ghost led Scrooge down the street and into a tiny house. Beside a small Christmas tree, a man was playing with his children, and the man looked up. He was Scrooge's clerk, Bob Cratchit. "Cratchit!" Scrooge frowned. "He lives here?" The ghost nodded. "It's all that he can afford." Mrs. Cratchit carried a small turkey into the room. She smiled as she carried the platter to the table. The older children giggled and raced to the table. "Their clothes are rags," said Scrooge, "and their turkey is nothing but bones." Bob Cratchit lifted the youngest boy from a chair in the corner and carried him to the table. The boy was pale and thin and carried a crutch. His name was Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim raised his cup of water and smiled. "Merry Christmas," he said. "God bless us, every one." "What is wrong with that child?" Scrooge asked. "Come," said the ghost, and he turned to leave. "Wait," Scrooge said. "Their child is hurt. Their turkey is all bones. Tell me why they are so happy." Bong, bong, bong. Scrooge blinked. He was in his own bed again, and the ghost of Christmas Present was gone. But as Scrooge sat up, another ghost floated into the room. "Who are you?" he asked. "You must be the ghost of Christmas yet to come." The phantom gestured toward the door. Scrooge followed him into the counting house. 3 men stood out front, and the ghost led Scrooge closer. "Poor old Scrooge," said one. "They say he's very sick." "If I know Ebenezer," said another man, "he'll work during his own funeral." "It is bad news, though," said the third man. "If Scrooge closes down, I'll have to find another counting house." Scrooge then turned to the ghost. "But I'm not closing down." The phantom turned. Scrooge followed him to a tiny room with faded walls. "But this is Cratchit's house," Scrooge said. "I've already seen them." The spirit turned his head and led Scrooge into a bedroom. Mr. Cratchit held Tiny Tim's hand. "What's wrong with him?" asked Scrooge. Mrs. Cratchit came in. Scrooge watched Tiny Tim. His face was drawn and pale. "We can't go on without Tiny Tim," said Mrs. Cratchit. "Without Tiny Tim?" Scrooge gasped. "Well, what can't be?" "But that can't be. Is he dying?" And the ghost nodded, and then turned toward the door. "No!" cried Scrooge. "We must help him." The Cratchit's house faded away. Scrooge found himself outside. He glanced around. A gravel path led through the row of granite homes. "This is a cemetery," said Scrooge. "Oh, no, not Tiny Tim. Is it too late?" The ghost pointed at a new grave. Engraved on the simple stone were two words, Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge stared. "Mine?" he whispered. "The grave is mine." Scrooge closed his eyes. He then fell to his knees. "Give me another chance," cried Scrooge. He opened his eyes. He was in his own room, and from his open window he spotted a boy in the street. "You there!" he shouted. "What day is this?" "It's Christmas, sir," the boy said. "Good. Please, do me a favor." Scrooge pulled out a bag of money. He tossed some coins down to the boy. "There's a big juicy turkey at the butcher shop. Buy it and deliver it to Bob Cratchit's house." The boy held up the coins. "Sir, this is twice the cost of the turkey." Scrooge then laughed. "Keep the rest for your trouble." The boy grinned. "Yes, sir," and he scurried away. Scrooge dressed up in his finest clothes, planted his top hat on his head, and headed over to his nephew's house. Everything looked familiar, very familiar to Scrooge. "It's just like before," he said. He tipped his hat to a group of carolers. "Merry Christmas," said Scrooge. "And Merry Christmas to you," said the carolers. Scrooge's nephew was surprised to see him. "Uncle," he cried, "did you change your mind about dinner?" "Yes," said Scrooge, "if you will have me." "We'd be delighted to have you," said his nephew. After dinner, Scrooge said, "Thank you. I hate to leave, but I have yet another stop to make." He hurried down the street to Bob Cratchit's house. And from that day on, each time he sat down to a meal, Scrooge would raise his glass in a toast. "God bless us," he would say. "God bless us, every one." Christmas Pageant. It is the first night of the Christmas pageant. Nervous children are running here and there. They are getting ready to play the parts of Mary, Joseph, the shepherds, and the three wise men. They will then tell the story of the birth of Christ. Parents filed into the church. Jimmy, who is dressed up in his special shepherd's costume, grips his father's hand tightly, but he's very nervous. He worries that he will forget some of his lines, but his father soon makes him feel better. "Jimmy, if you forget what you were supposed to say, think about the meaning of the story," Jimmy's father said. "That should help you think of what line comes next." Jimmy lets go of his father's hand and hurries up onto the stage. Jimmy watches his friends, Greg and Sarah, go on stage. They will be playing Joseph and Mary at the pageant. In rehearsals, Greg and Sarah have always giggled when they said their lines, but now they both look very serious. Sarah carries a doll that is supposed to be the baby Jesus. On stage, Greg notices that the boy playing the innkeeper has buttoned up his shirt wrong. And Greg thinks this is very funny, but he clears his throat and says his lines without even a tiny giggle. "May we have a place to stay?" he asks. "I have no room at my inn," said the innkeeper, "but you may stay in my stable." Off stage, Greg and Sarah burst out laughing, and Jimmy giggles too. Now, it's Jimmy's turn on stage. He walks out from behind the curtain. There are so many faces in the audience. Jimmy tries not to look at them. Instead, he looks at his feet, and now he does not feel so nervous. Jimmy bends down to feed a lamb, but he cannot remember his lines. He thinks about the meaning of the story like his father told him. He then takes a deep breath and remembers his lines. Christ the Savior is born today, Jimmy says. Let's praise the baby Jesus. Jimmy looks at his audience. The faces are all smiling. Jimmy smiles. He bows and then looks around for his father. His father gives him a wink, and Jimmy hurries off the stage. Jimmy stands backstage now, and he is bouncing with excitement. He delivered his first set of lines without a problem. His father's trick really worked. Now his friend Tina takes the stage, and she begins by singing a Christmas song. With her big smile and bright sparkling eyes, Tina looks exactly like an angel should, Jimmy thinks to himself. As Tina steps across the stage, her right shoe slips off and lands at the edge of the stage, but she keeps on singing. Tina takes off her other shoe and sits down, and then she sings yet another Christmas tune. Jimmy looks at Tina on stage and thinks that angels should not wear shoes anyway. They must get in the way when they are flying, thinks Jimmy. Now it is time for Jimmy's next scene. When Rob, the other shepherd, joins him on the stage, Jimmy sees that he is very nervous. Jimmy remembers his father and winks at Rob. He says, "Just do what I do and you'll be fine." Rob smiles at his friend. "Okay," he says, "I'll just follow you." Jimmy kneels, and so does Rob. Jimmy bows his head, and Rob bows his head too. "Baby Jesus," Jimmy says, "you will have many special friends in your life." And then Rob remembers his line. "They will be thankful to be your friend," he says. Rob is thankful that Jimmy is his friend. "Thank you for helping me," he whispers to Jimmy. And as Jimmy walks off the stage, the three wise men, played by Matt, Andy, and Sean, are walking on. The night before, Jimmy helped them pick out gifts for the baby Jesus. First comes Matt. He brought some of his best rocks from his rock collection. He carries them in a pretty colorful box, and he leads the way wearing a red robe and a big smile. Next comes Andy, who puts his favorite jelly beans in a jar. He ate a few of them backstage, but there are still plenty left. Last comes Sean, who brought his pet mouse. The little mouse squeaks as the boys walk up the aisle. Sean hopes that no one opens the box on stage, and he hopes that the baby Jesus likes his gift. Now Jimmy and the other children gather on stage. A bright spotlight shines down on the baby. The shepherds and the wise men gather around him. The three wise men kneel down and offer their gifts to little Jesus. Jimmy and Rob are no longer so nervous. They think about how the shepherds should behave. John and Sarah no longer feel like giggling. They think about how Mary and Joseph would have felt. And Sean forgets about his pet mouse in the box. He pretends to have Myrrh in his box now. The children close their eyes and pretend that they are in Bethlehem on the day that Jesus is born. Soon they forget that their parents are watching them. They bow their heads and pray to the baby Jesus. Jimmy watches as Sarah holds the baby Jesus. She is playing the part of Mary. Jimmy hopes that she does not giggle during her last scene. Jimmy has nothing to worry about. Sarah just holds the baby tightly, and then she looks at the baby and speaks out just as a mother would. "I love you very much," she says. "You are my special baby. As you grow up, I want you to laugh and have fun. But just remember that there are times to be serious, too." Everyone thinks Sarah has chosen the perfect words to say, and soon the church is filled with applause. All the parents stand up and clap for their children. The children smile and take a bow, and they are very proud of themselves. Jimmy's father is very proud of him, too. He runs to greet Jimmy after the play is over. "You did a wonderful job," he said. Sarah, Jimmy, and the rest of the children have managed to capture the true meaning of Christmas with their play. Their performance has made this the most wonderful Christmas pageant that the town has ever seen. Waiting for Santa. Sally climbs the stairs and gets ready for bed. She brushes her teeth and changes into her favorite nightgown. "Grandma, when will Santa be here?" little Sally asks as she crawls up into the big bed. It is Christmas Eve. Everyone knows that on Christmas Eve each minute is as long as a day, and it is very difficult to fall asleep, too. "Santa will be here before you know it," Grandma says. "Let me tell you a story while we wait. When I was your age, I knew a young girl just like you. She looked very much just like you, too. This little girl's name was Lucy, and she waited for Santa, too. As she helped her family decorate the house for Christmas, she asked her mother if Santa really lived at the North Pole or right here in town. When the decorations were up, Lucy ran to find her grandfather. Surely he knew about Santa. He looked as old as St. Nick, and he seemed to know everything. He had a bushy white beard, rosy cheeks, and when he laughed, his big round belly shook just like jelly. But his voice was the greatest. It was so deep, it rang out like a church bell. "Grandy, when will Santa get here?" Lucy asked. "I've been waiting all day." "That's just it," her grandfather said. "Santa only comes when you least expect him. That's the way all great things arrive." "Well, I don't think I can wait any longer," said Lucy. "I wish he would come right now." "You must be patient," her grandfather said. Was he right?" Sally asked Grandma. "Does Santa really come when you least expect him?" "You'll see," Grandma answers. Lucy joined her mother in the bedroom where they put on their best clothes. They were getting all dressed up for their family Christmas party. "Mama," Lucy said, "Grandy knows so much. Don't you think he looks just like Santa? And Santa is supposed to know everything. Grandy knows in a snap if I've ever been bad. If he has been out, I think he might be Santa Claus." Lucy's mother sighed. "He is a special man," she said, "but do you really think he could be the Santa Claus? Being Santa Claus is a very important job, and I'm not sure your grandfather has time." Later that afternoon, Lucy and her family sat around the blazing fire to sing Christmas carols. The singing stopped short when a loud thud came from the chimney. "What was that?" Lucy asked. "I hear Santa. He's coming right now." She ran out into the yard, but when she looked up under the roof was empty. And then Lucy trudged back inside. "That wasn't Santa at all," Lucy said to her grandfather. "Do you think," said Lucy's grandfather, "that Santa would come down a chimney filled with smoke and fire?" "You're right," she replied. "I'll just have to wait for the fire to burn out." When the guests finally arrived and the party began, Lucy wondered how the other guests would be so patient. Weren't they, too, thinking about Santa's arrival? "It's getting late, Grandy," said Lucy. "Maybe Santa is stuck in an ice storm and can't make it, or one of his reindeer is sick and can't fly, or maybe the elves forgot to make the toys." "Remember, my dear, you have to have faith," said her grandfather, "and be patient. There's no use in trying to figure him out. I think he wants to keep his comings and goings a secret. Otherwise, you would not be so surprised when he comes." "All right, Grandy," Lucy said. "I'll try to be patient. I do love surprises." And with that, Lucy's grandfather walked away. She watched him talk cheerfully to everyone in the room, and soon Lucy forgot about waiting for Santa. She joined the rest of the party and had fun. Lucy watched the men and the women dancing, and then she ate some of the delicious food that her mother had prepared for the guests. After the night's last song, Lucy's grandfather hugged her and wished her a Merry Christmas. Lucy kissed her grandfather on the cheek, and only then did she realize that it was close to midnight. "Oh, Grandy," Lucy said, "the time flew by when I wasn't thinking about Santa, and I had more fun, too. I can't believe it's midnight already." Lucy's grandfather just smiled. "Did the girl go to sleep without looking to see if Santa had come?" Sally asked. "Not exactly," Grandma replies. As the last guest said good night, Lucy peeked at the Christmas tree, hoping that new presents would be there. But all she saw were the few gifts that her family had put there. She was going to wait there next to the fireplace. But soon she heard her mother's voice. Lucy ran to the stairs. "Time for bed," Lucy's mother called. "If you don't go to sleep now, Santa may never come. He only comes when you are sleeping." Lucy's father carried her up to her bed. With each step, Lucy felt more tired, and before they reached her room, Lucy was fast asleep. And then, during the night, Lucy awoke. She rubbed her eyes and thought she heard sleigh bells jingling in the distance, and far off she heard a hearty "Ho, ho, ho," and the voice sounded so familiar. Grandy? Lucy thought. But she was still half asleep. No, it couldn't be. And Lucy soon fell back to sleep. In the morning, she would find new presents under the tree and a note from Santa. As she finishes her story, Grandma looks down at Sally. She has drifted off to sleep. Wishing her happy dreams, Grandma pulls up Sally's covers and turns out the light. She then walks downstairs to place a small wreath on the mantel for Santa. She thinks about herself and all those years ago when she was a little girl in the story. Grandma looks at the wreath over the fireplace, and then she remembers her Grandy, the gentleman with the shining eyes and unmistakable voice. Could he really be Santa? It's possible, she says to herself. And this story, entitled Christmas Gifts. It was Christmas Eve in a snowy barnyard. 7 ordinary animals had just settled down for the night. It was just another ordinary night, or so they thought. The hour of midnight drew near. Snow fell gently and silently to the ground. And then something quite amazing happened. These 7 ordinary animals in the simple barn became 7 special animals, if only for just this one night. "What has happened?" asked the young sheep. "Bah, bah, I can talk." "Me too," said the dog. "Ruff, ruff." "Moo, listen to me," said the little calf. "What's going on?" asked the surprised donkey. "Hee-haw." The cow was not surprised. "It's midnight," she said, "and it's Christmas Eve." "What does this mean?" asked the sheep. "I'll tell you a story," said the cow, "about the very first Christmas, and then you will understand." All the animals in the barn gathered to hear the cow's story. "Long, long ago, one special night," began the cow, "baby Jesus was born in an ordinary stable in an ordinary town called Bethlehem. This was the first Christmas." "Was the stable like this barn?" the dog asked. "Yes," said the cow, "almost exactly like it." "Were the animals in the stable just like us?" asked the young calf. "Yes," said the cow, "with animals just like us. But let me explain. Before baby Jesus was born, his mother, Mary, and her husband, Joseph, had to travel through the countryside to the town of Bethlehem. Their trip took many days. They traveled up and down steep hills, and to make things easier for Mary, an ordinary donkey carried her on his back on this long trip, and Joseph led the way. "A donkey just like me?" asked the donkey. "Yes, a donkey just like you," said the cow. Finally, Mary and Joseph arrived in Bethlehem, but there was nowhere for them to sleep. They had to go to a stable and sleep with the animals. The donkey carried Mary safely to that stable. So it was an ordinary donkey who gave baby Jesus a precious and unique gift, even before he was born, by carrying Mary safely to Bethlehem. Later that evening, inside this simple stable, Mary gave birth to a very special baby named Jesus. The stable was cold. Luckily, in that stable lived a handsome sheep with very, very soft and beautiful wool. "A sheep like me?" asked the little sheep. "Yes, just like you and your mother," answered the cow. "And this sheep's soft, beautiful wool was made into a very special blanket. The sheep offered this blanket, her unique and most precious gift, to the baby. And Mary wrapped baby Jesus in this special, soft, woolly blanket. It would keep the baby snug and safe during their stay in the stable. After their long journey and the birth of the baby, Mary and Joseph were too tired for lullabies. They needed something to lull the baby to sleep. But what? Mary and Joseph were lucky to find a gentle dove living high in the rafters of the stable. "A dove, just like me?" asked the dove. "Just like you," said the cow, and each night her soft cooing soothed the animals in the barns so that they could enjoy a good night's sleep. That night the white dove began to coo very softly. This cooing quickly lulled baby Jesus to sleep as he lay covered with a sheep's special soft woolly blanket. But the baby Jesus still didn't have everything he needed, even with these, the most precious and unique Christmas gifts. Since baby Jesus was so special, someone was needed to keep watch over him and his family. A brave dog lived in the stable, and though he wasn't very big, he was a very special watchdog. "Just like me?" said the dog. "Yes, just like you," said the cow. All night this brave dog stood watch at the door of the stable. No harm would come to baby Jesus as long as he was around. The dog was glad to offer this precious and unique gift and protect the baby from danger. All the animals in the stable gathered around baby Jesus to adore him. Covered with a special blanket and lulled to sleep by the gentle cooing of the dove, the baby still needed some place very special to sleep. His mother could not hold him in her arms all night, so Mary needed a comfortable bed for her child. The ordinary cow came forward and offered the manger, her most precious and unique gift, so that the baby would have a special, soft, and safe place to rest his sweet head. "An ordinary cow, just like you and me, Mom?" asked the young calf. "Yes, just like you and me, dear," said the cow. Mary and Joseph lined the manger with hay and tucked baby Jesus under the soft woolen blanket. That night, something else happened that was very special, continued the cow. A bright star began to shine in the sky, and the animals were puzzled again. "But where did that star come from?" asked the young calf. The star was a gift from God. It was there to announce to the world that a special baby had been born. It was the largest star in the sky. It shone over the earth to lead travelers from far and near to the baby Jesus. And in fact, the star was so bright, the stable glowed as the dog stood watch with the cow and the donkey right nearby. "So you see," said the cow, "it was on a very special night, in a very simple stable like this one, that ordinary animals became special animals. And they became special animals because of the unique and precious Christmas gift that each one of them offered to baby Jesus." The animals gathered closer to the cow. "It was a donkey like me who carried the baby's mother safely on his back," said the donkey. "And a sheep like me gave the baby a special woolen blanket," said the young sheep. "Only a dove like me could have lulled the baby to sleep," cooed the dove. "And it took a brave dog to keep watch over them all," said the dog. "Just like me. Ruff, ruff." "Yes, everyone has a unique and most special gift to give at Christmas," said the cow. "That is why animals like us are given this special gift of speech each Christmas Eve at midnight, so that we might tell our children about those very first Christmas gifts given by very ordinary animals." The animals gathered at the door to the stable. Suddenly, they saw a bright star in the sky. "Look, it's the same star shining in the sky," said the young donkey. "Yes," said the cow, "a very special star, to always remind us of that very special night that the most special baby was born." And here's a story that you're all familiar with, The Night Before Christmas, written, of course, by Clement C. Moore. We'll stop our reading at this point. You've been listening to a very special reading of Merry Christmas, a treasury of stories and songs. So this is Dick Schultz, hoping you'll join us for episode number 2 of Merry Christmas, a treasury of Stories and Songs.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have...
The Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a serialized reading of the book Merry Christmas, Treasury of Stories and Songs. The book was published in 2002 by Publications International and is 264 pages long. Today's reading, Episode 2, begins on page 141. I'm your reader, Elaine Knecht. The Night Before Christmas, written by Clement C. Moore. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And Mamma in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new-fallen snow gave a luster of midday to objects below, when what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donder and Blitzen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky, so up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys, and St. Nicholas too. And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke, it encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying a finger aside of his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." The Tailor's Apprentices, written by Leslie Lindecker. Back in the days when men wore beautiful clothes and wigs, there was a poor tailor. He worked diligently and spent all of his money on lovely fabrics. He worked from dawn to the last light of dusk, making beautiful garments for the citizens of the town. Although his own coat was quite threadbare and popping at the seams, the coats he made for the townsfolk featured fine silk and satin, warm velvet, and corduroy. As he snipped and stitched, the tailor talked to the mice who lived beneath the floor. A little mouse hopped onto the end of the tailor's work table. The tailor smiled and said, "Someday my hard work will be rewarded. Until then, you must appreciate the bits and ends that are too small for me to use." The mouse winked at the tailor. Then he daintily picked up a bit of ribbon from the table, scrambled to the floor, and disappeared into the woodwork. The tailor laughed softly to himself and continued to sew. "I wonder what he'll make," thought the tailor. On the very day the good mayor of the town announced his wedding was to be on Christmas Day, the tailor received a request from the mayor for a special new suit. The tailor danced with glee. The mice peeked out from under his table to see what was happening. "My little friends," the tailor said, "you shall have the finest bits of lace and thread, because I am going to make the mayor's suit for his wedding on Christmas Day. It shall be of my best emerald satin, embroidered and stitched with gold. I shall make a beautiful vest also, all trimmed with lace. A happy day indeed." The mice squealed in agreement and scurried out from under the tailor's dancing feet. The tailor measured and marked and measured again. He cut out the coat from the emerald cloth and trimmed it carefully with small snips. He spun the cloth around and measured once again. "No waste on this fabric, just enough for a suit for a mouse, and such a grand suit that would be all stitched with gold," the tailor said. Soon the table was covered with cut pieces of cloth. There were buttons and bows, flaps for the pockets, and cuffs for the sleeves. The floor was littered with bits of green and gold thread and lace. Everything was ready to begin sewing the beautiful emerald suit in the morning, except for one spool of thread. The tailor heaved a sigh, took off his spectacles, and rubbed his eyes. "We will begin again in the morning, my friends. It is too dark to sew tonight." The tailor pulled on his old worn-out coat, snuffed out the lit candle, and stepped out of his shop into the snowy December night. He fastened the window latch and locked the door, putting the key in his pocket. He shuffled through the snow and up the rickety stairs to the room he rented above his shop. The tailor lived alone with his cat, whom he called Tompkin. As he unlocked the door, Tompkin meowed. "Tompkin, old friend," said the tailor, "fortune has finally smiled upon us, but I am worn out beyond working this night." The tailor built up a fire in the grate, then took a scrap of paper and made a list. "Tompkin, I need you to go to the shopkeeper. We need a bottle of milk, a bit of bread, and I must have a spool of golden thread for the mayor's new suit. Please don't forget the golden thread." The tailor tied the list and his last dollar to Tompkin's collar, and then opened the door for the cat. Tompkin walked slowly into the dark, cold night. Although he was usually a faithful cat, Tompkin wasn't fond of the cold. In fact, he hated the cold. Instead of bread, milk, and a spool of golden thread, Tompkin had mice on his mind. Tompkin spent much of his time chasing the fast, crafty mice. They were often too fast for him. He would run and pounce at them, but they would slip away under the floorboards. That day, Tompkin was especially fortunate. He had caught many mice that morning. Saving them for his supper, Tompkin trapped the small mice under bowls and cups. At least after his long walk in the cold, he would enjoy a fine meal. The tailor was very tired. "I fear I've a touch of the flu," he said as he felt his forehead. He went to bed and thought about the mayor's new suit. Feverish, the tailor reached out to touch the emerald fabric and the crisp white lace. He imagined the most beautiful suit. "The mayor will be pleased when he wears this fine suit," he said to himself, "the finest suit fit for the mayor on Christmas Day." Suddenly the tailor heard a tip-tip-tap coming from somewhere in the small room. It was the faintest of tip-tip-taps, but the tailor went to investigate. He searched under the bed. He searched under the sink. He searched under the table. He could see nothing, but he continued to hear the tip-tip-tapping. The sound was the loudest at the side of the sink. At the sink, his teacups and mugs, bowls and pots were all turned upside down. From under one of the teacups, he heard the tip-tip-tap again. Slowly, the tailor lifted the teacup, and out popped a lovely lady mouse. She smiled and soon scampered away. The tailor took off his spectacles and rubbed his eyes. Then he heard a scratch, scratch, scratch. He looked under a bowl and was met with the gaze of a handsome gentleman mouse, who bowed to the tailor before running away. "I truly must be ill, for I could swear that mouse was wearing a hat," exclaimed the tailor. "I do believe my dear old Tompkin has been very busy, and I don't think he captured these mice for company." The tailor began to turn over all the teacups and mugs. He found many little mice hopping and bobbing and running about. The tailor continued to talk to himself while he prepared for bed. "Ah, the mayor's suit shall be my finest creation," he said, "but will I be able to finish it by Christmas Day?" The little mice listened to the tailor as he muttered on about the suit for the mayor. Suddenly they began to squeak and scamper. They all ran away and hid under the floorboards. Tompkin nudged open the door and walked in with a gust of cold air. He hated snow, and it was in his ears. He jumped up on the table and dropped the sack he'd been carrying in his mouth. It contained the bottle of milk and the bit of bread. Then Tompkin spied the overturned teacups. With an angry cat snarl, he jumped onto the sink. The last little mice scurried to the floor and ran away. "Tompkin, old friend," the tailor said from his bed, "did you get my spool of golden thread?" Being in an ill-tempered mood, Tompkin hid the spool of thread under the teapot lid. He jumped up onto the tailor's bed and kneaded the quilt with his claws. Then Tompkin hunted throughout the room for even one of the mice he had captured. Tompkin looked behind doors and under the bed, but not one mouse was to be found. The two of them made a strange chorus that night, with the tailor feverishly muttering about his golden thread, accompanied by Tompkin meowing and growling for his little lost mice. The tailor was feeling very sick and stayed in bed for several days, tossing and turning with fever. He mumbled about the mayor's suit and the spool of thread. Christmas Day was fast approaching, and he was too ill to work. Tompkin mewed for the little mice, and he fed on the bit of bread and milk he had fetched a few days before. How he wanted those mice! Christmas Eve came, and the townsfolk scurried about in preparation for Christmas Day. No one thought of the mayor's shop and the mayor's fine suit. Later that night, the animals in the town lifted their voices to celebrate. However, Tompkin only heard the voices coming from inside the tailor's shop. Tompkin went down the rickety steps and into the snow to see what was happening. From the window ledge he peeked into the shop. In the candlelight, Tompkin could see his little brown mice, singing and dancing and sewing. They were stitching the beautiful emerald coat with the golden thread and wonderful lace. Tompkin yowled through the window at the mice. They jumped, then giggled and waved at the cat who was peeking through the glass. They continued to sew and dance to their songs, keeping time with the click of their thimbles. Tompkin tried to pull the latch on the door, but the key was resting safely in the pocket of the tailor's old coat, and Tompkin couldn't get in. Fascinated, Tompkin watched the little mice sew the mayor's new suit. Near dawn, he heard the mice cry in chorus, "No more golden thread!" Then the mice ran away. Tompkin jumped down from the window ledge and climbed the steps to the tailor's tiny room. He dropped the spool of thread on the tailor's bed. "Tompkin, you did get my thread," said the tailor. He jumped up from bed. "It's Christmas Day, and what will the mayor do for his suit?" he cried. The tailor hurried down the steps to the shop. As he opened the door, the tailor shouted for joy. Everything was finished except for one tiny buttonhole. There was a scrap of paper pinned to the buttonhole that read, "No more golden thread." The tailor danced about, then finished the buttonhole. Thus began the long and good fortune of Tompkin and the tailor, who grew quite rich. Jingle Bells, written by Sarah Toast. Andrew and his sister Arabella live in town. Andrew works in Mr. Ward's store, and Arabella teaches school. Their family, mother, father, Ned, Sue, and Grandpa, all live on the farm where Andrew and Arabella grew up. It's Christmas Eve. Andrew and Arabella have been planning a wonderful Christmas surprise for their family. Andrew asks Mr. Ward if he can borrow his horse Nellie and the sleigh. "Why, certainly," says Mr. Ward. "It will be my Christmas gift to you." Andrew walks to Mr. Ward's stable. He puts a leather strap with jingle bells on Nellie's tail and ties a bright red ribbon round her neck. Then he leads her out into the snow. Andrew hitches up the sleigh, he tosses in a warm blanket, and guides Nellie out of the gate. He and Nellie pass a watchful snowman as they glide toward town to get Arabella. The sun is just starting to set in the early evening sky. The bells on Nellie's tail jingle and jangle with the rhythm of her prancing steps. Andrew whistles "Jingle Bells" as the sleigh glides along the snowy path. He admires the Christmas wreaths hanging on each front door. Arabella had to work today, too, but now she waits anxiously for Andrew at the boarding house where she lives. Her spirits are bright with happiness at the thought of their Christmas surprise. She peeks out the window to look for Andrew. The lights are coming on in the houses in town as Nellie pulls Andrew down the center of Main Street. The horse has to pull harder through the drifting piles of snow. Andrew thinks about how far it is to the farm where his family is gathered together for Christmas. Even aunts, uncles, and cousins are visiting at the farm for the holiday. At the end of the street, Andrew passes a small group of Christmas carolers. They make their way from house to house singing songs of Christmas joy. Nellie's jingling bells add some cheerful music to the carolers' songs. Andrew smiles as he passes the singers. He slows down as he comes to the boarding house where Arabella stays. Andrew stops outside the boarding house, hitches Nellie to the post. Arabella quickly puts on her hat and gloves. Then she runs to the door before Andrew can even ring the bell. "Andrew, do you think they know we're coming?" Arabella asks. "No," he says. "They know that we work today. They wouldn't expect us tonight." Nellie swishes her tail, jingling the bells, as Andrew takes Arabella's hand. He helps Arabella climb up into the sleigh. "I'm so glad we sent our presents already," says Arabella with a twinkle. "That will surely make them think we couldn't come." Snow continues to fall softly as Andrew and Arabella head for the farm. "I'm eager to see Mother and Father and Grandpa again," says Andrew. "And little Ned and Sue, too," says Arabella. "Do you think they will like all of the nice presents we sent to them?" "Will we get to see when they open the presents, won't we?" Andrew replies. "With any luck, we'll be home before they even wake up. Won't they be so surprised?" The sky is getting darker as night falls, but the starlight and moonlight twinkling on the snow make the night bright and sparkly. Nellie doesn't need a lantern to find her way. Andrew and Arabella talk of Christmases when they were little as Nellie pulls them home. They remember their favorite Christmas gifts. Then they sing their favorite Christmas songs and laugh when the jingling bells don't match their songs. Around midnight, clouds blow across the bright face of the moon. The stars are hidden as well. Andrew and Arabella are not even halfway home yet, and they are nearing the deep woods. Among the trees, it's difficult to see the road. The deep woods is a very dark place, but Nellie is strong and seems to know the way. "I knew I'd seen Nellie before," says Arabella. "She's from the horse farm next to Mother and Father's farm." It isn't long before the clouds disappear. The moonlight reflects brightly off the snow, but the late hour and the rhythm of the jingling bells are making Arabella and Andrew sleepy. "Andrew, how about if I take a turn at the reins so you can take a nap?" suggests Arabella. "Are you sure?" asks Andrew. "It might be a little slippery out here." "Yes," says Arabella. "I've been looking forward to driving Nellie." Soon, only the sound of Nellie's bells breaks the deep silence. Arabella marvels at the purple shadows cast on the snow in the moonlight. She's filled with awe by the haloed stars that crowd the beautiful Christmas Eve sky. Later, an owl hoots and Andrew awakens. He's refreshed from his long nap. "Your turn to sleep, Arabella," says Andrew. He takes the reins from her, and Arabella naps. Nellie seems to speed up as they come closer to home. Arabella awakens as the sky brightens to greet Christmas Day. "We're almost there, Andrew," she exclaims when she sees the familiar shape of the family farmhouse again. "I can't wait to surprise our family on Christmas morning." It isn't long before they turn onto the road that leads up to their gate. Already there's a light on in the kitchen. Mother is always up first. She's making hot chocolate and coffee. Sleepy faces peer out the windows as Nellie brings the sleigh right up to the door. Mother runs out to hug Arabella and Andrew. "My goodness, we didn't think you'd be home for Christmas this year," says Mother. The windows fly open and voices, young and old, shout, "Merry Christmas, Andrew! Merry Christmas, Arabella!" What a Merry Christmas surprise. The Nutcracker by E.T.A. Hoffman. On Christmas Eve, Dr. Stahlbaum's children were not allowed to set foot in the parlor. Fritz and Clara sat together in the back room and waited. "Oh, what do you think Godfather Drosselmeyer has made for us?" asked Clara. Fritz said it was a fortress with lots of soldiers. "No," Clara interrupted. "It's a beautiful garden with a big lake and lovely swans swimming around." "Godfather Drosselmeyer can't make a garden," said Fritz rather rudely. At that moment a bell rang, the doors flew open, and a flood of light streamed in from the big parlor. "Come in, dear children," said Papa and Mama. The children stood in awe. Then Clara cried out, "Oh, how lovely! The tree is spectacular!" Meanwhile, Fritz galloped around the table, trying out the new horse he had found. Then he reviewed his new squadron of soldiers. Just then the bell rang again. Knowing that Godfather Drosselmeyer would be unveiling his present, the children ran to a table near the wall. There they found a magnificent castle with lots of sparkling windows and towers. Fritz looked at the toy children dancing in the castle, then said, "Godfather Drosselmeyer, I want to go inside your castle." "Impossible," said Godfather Drosselmeyer. "Then make the children come out," cried Fritz. "No," said their godfather crossly, "that too is impossible. This is how the mechanism works." "Then I don't like it," said Fritz. "My soldiers march as I command, and they're not stuck in the house." Fritz marched away to play with his soldiers. Clara did not leave the Christmas table. She had just caught sight of something. When Fritz marched away, an excellent little man came into view. The distinction of his dress showed him to be a man of taste and breeding. Oddly enough, he wore a skimpy cloak that was made of wood. His green eyes were full of kindness, and his cotton beard was most becoming. "Oh, Father!" Clara cried out, "who does that little man belong to?" "Dear child," said Dr. Stahlbaum, "our friend here will serve you well. He will crack nuts for you." Dr. Stahlbaum carefully lifted his wooden cloak, and the little man opened his mouth wide, revealing 2 rows of sharp white teeth. Clara put in a nut, and crack! The little man bit it in 2. The shell fell down, and Clara found the kernel in her hand. Fritz ran over to his sister. He chose the biggest nut, and all of a sudden, crack, crack! 3 little teeth fell out of the nutcracker's mouth. "Oh, my poor little nutcracker!" Clara cried. "He calls himself a nutcracker," said Fritz, "but his teeth are no good. Give him to me, Clara." Clara was in tears. "No," she cried, "he's mine, and you can't have him." Clara wrapped the nutcracker in her handkerchief and bandaged his wounded mouth. Then she rocked him in her arms like a baby. It was getting late. Mother urged her children to go to bed, but Clara pleaded, "Just a little while longer, Mother." Clara's mother put out all of the candles, leaving on only 1 lamp. "Go to bed soon," she said, "or you won't be able to get up tomorrow." "Thank you," Clara said, smiling. As soon as Clara was alone, she set the poor nutcracker carefully on the table. Clara unwrapped the handkerchief ever so slowly and examined his wounds. "Nutcracker," she said softly, "I'm going to take care of you until you are well and happy again." Clara picked up the nutcracker and placed him next to the other toys in the parlor cabinet. She was going to her bedroom when she heard whispering and shuffling. The clock whirred 12 times. Then she heard 1,000 tiny feet scampering behind the walls. Soon Clara saw mice all over the room. Noisily they formed ranks just like Fritz's soldiers. Crushed stone flew out of the floor as though driven by some underground force, and 7 mouse heads with 7 sparkling crowns rose up, squeaking and squealing hideously. This enormous mouse with 7 heads was hailed by the entire army, and then the army set itself in motion, hop, hop, trot, trot, heading straight for the toy cabinet. At the same time, Clara saw a strange glow inside the toy cabinet. All at once, the nutcracker jumped from the cabinet, and the squeaking and squealing started again. "Trusty vassal drummer," cried the nutcracker, "sound the advance." He played so loudly that the windows of the toy cabinet rattled. A clattering was heard from inside, and all the boxes containing Fritz's army burst open. Soldiers climbed out and jumped to the bottom shelf. Then they formed ranks on the floor. The nutcracker ran up and down, shouting words of encouragement to the troops. A few moments later, guns roared. Boom! Boom! There was so much smoke and dust that Clara could hardly see what was happening. Then the mice brought up more troops. The nutcracker found himself trapped against the toy cabinet. "Bring up the reserves!" he cried. A few men came out, but they wielded their swords so very clumsily. One of them knocked off the nutcracker's cap. The nutcracker was in dire peril. He tried to jump over the ledge of the cabinet, but his legs were too short. In despair, he shouted, "A horse! A horse! My kingdom for a horse!" At that moment, the Mouse King charged the nutcracker. Without quite knowing what she was doing, Clara took off her left shoe and flung it with all her might. Then everything vanished from Clara's sight. She fell to the floor. When Clara woke from her deep sleep, she was lying in her own little bed. The sun shining into the room sparkled on the ice-coated window panes. A strange gentleman was sitting beside her, but she soon recognized him as Dr. Wendelstern. "She's awake," he said softly to Clara's mother. She came over and gave Clara an anxious look. "Oh, mother dear, have all the nasty mice gone away?" Clara whispered. "Did I save the poor nutcracker?" Clara's mother sighed. "What have mice got to do with the nutcracker? Oh, we've been very worried about you. Last night I found you lying beside the toy cabinet in a faint. Your arm was bleeding terribly." "Well, Mother," Clara broke in, "there had just been a big battle between the toy soldiers and the mice. The mice were going to capture the poor nutcracker. I threw my shoe at the mice, and after that I don't know what happened." Clara's parents talked with Dr. Wendelstern. Clara had to stay in bed and take medicine for a week. When Godfather Drosselmeyer came to visit, he brought books and lovely sweets of every color. "I've brought you something else that will give you pleasure," he told Clara. With that, he reached into his pocket and took out the nutcracker, whose lost teeth had been put back in very neatly and firmly, and whose broken jaw had been fixed as good as new. Clara cried out for joy. That night, Clara was awakened by the sound of 1,000 tiny feet. "Oh, no, the mice!" Clara cried. Then she saw the Mouse King squeeze through a hole in the wall. He scurried across the floor and jumped onto the table beside Clara's bed. "Give me your candy," he said, "or I'll bite your nutcracker to pieces." Oh, then he slipped back into his hole. Clara was so frightened that she couldn't speak. She jumped out of her bed. Then she put her whole supply of candy at the foot of her bed. By morning, every piece was gone. Clara was happy. She had saved her friend. That night, however, the Mouse King returned. "Give me your most beautiful dress and all of your picture books," he hissed. Clara was beside herself with anguish. The next morning she went to the Nutcracker and said, "What can I do? If I give the Mouse King all my books and my dress, he'll just keep asking for more." The Nutcracker said in a strained whisper, "Find me a sword." At that, his words ebbed away and his eyes became fixed. Clara asked Fritz for a sword, and Fritz slung it around the Nutcracker's waist. The next night, fear and dread kept Clara awake. At the stroke of 12, she heard clanging and crashing, then suddenly, squeak! Soon Clara heard a soft knocking at the door, and a faint little voice say, "Miss Stahlbaum, open the door and have no fear. I bring good news." Clara swiftly opened the door and found that the Nutcracker had turned into a prince. The prince took Clara's hand and told her how he was really Godfather Drosselmeyer's nephew, and an evil spell had turned him into a nutcracker. When he defeated the Mouse King, the spell was broken. "Oh, Miss Stahlbaum," said the prince, "what great things I can show you in this hour of victory over my enemy, if you will follow me a little way." Clara agreed and followed the prince to the big clothes cupboard in the entrance hall. The prince stepped inside and climbed a little ladder into the sleeve of a coat. Clara climbed the ladder too. When Clara looked out through the neck hole of the coat, she found herself in a fragrant meadow. "This is Candy Meadow," said the prince. Looking up, Clara saw a magnificent arch. "It's so wonderful here," she sighed. The prince clapped his hands, and a little shepherd appeared. He brought up a golden chair and asked Clara to sit down. Then the young shepherd danced a ballet. Suddenly, as if at a signal, he vanished into the woods. The prince took Clara's hand and led her on a tour of his kingdom. They walked through a grove where icing lined the rooftop of each house. They walked across bridges and had a picnic in the frosted forest. In the distance, Clara saw a city with a giant castle. "I have never seen anything so fantastic," Clara exclaimed. "Can we go there?" Suddenly, a gondola appeared. Clara and the prince were gently whisked away toward the city. Clara saw a castle with 100 lofty towers. "This," says the prince, "is Marzipan Castle." At that moment they heard soft music. The gates of the castle opened, and out stepped 4 ladies so richly attired that Clara knew they must be princesses. One by one they embraced their brother. The ladies led Clara and the prince into the castle. Then they prepared a meal for Clara and the prince. They brought in the most wonderful fruit and candy Clara had ever seen. They began to squeeze the fruit and grate sugared almonds. The most beautiful of the prince's sisters handed her a little gold mortar and said, "Dear sweet friend, would you like to pound some rock candy?" While Clara pounded away, the prince told the history of the cruel war between the Mouse King's army and his own. As Clara listened to his story, she began to feel very dizzy. The room began to spin, and Clara felt as though she were falling. Clara fell to the floor. When she opened her eyes, Clara was lying in her little bed. Her mother was standing over her. "Clara, how in the world can anyone sleep so long?" her mother exclaimed. "Oh, Mother," said Clara, "you cannot imagine all of the wonderful places that young Mr. Drosselmeyer took me to last night." Clara's mother looked at her in disbelief. "You've had a long, beautiful dream," she said. "That is all." "But, Mother," said Clara, "the Nutcracker is really young Mr. Drosselmeyer, Godfather Drosselmeyer's nephew, and he is a prince, too." Mrs. Stahlbaum burst out laughing. "You're to forget about all this foolishness." So Clara did. One day, Clara's mother said, "Your godfather's nephew is here, so be on your best behavior." Clara turned as red as a beet when she saw the young man. Then he asked her to go with him to the cabinet in the parlor. He went down on one knee and said, "Miss Stahlbaum, you see at your feet the happiest of young men, whose life you saved on this very spot. Please promise me that one day you will come and reign with me over Marzipan Castle." Clara said, "Of course I will come with you." Years later, Clara left in a carriage. She is still the queen of a country where the most wonderful things can be seen if you have the right sort of eyes for it. Christmas Socks, written by Sarah Toast. It's Christmas Eve. Santa and his elves have been working hard all year to make toys and dolls for children all over the world. Santa's big bag is packed so full it's overflowing with drums and bears, dolls and balls, all sorts of things to delight children on Christmas morning. "But Santa," says an elf, "how does your bag hold a toy for every child?" "Ho, ho, ho," says Santa with a laugh. "When I leave gifts under the Christmas trees, magic fills up my bag again." "That's amazing, Santa," says the elf. Just then Mrs. Claus dashes out of the house. "My dear, don't forget the candy for all the Christmas stockings." "Thank you very much," says Santa. He climbs into his sleigh. His sleigh is so full that Mrs. Claus can barely see Santa. In one house below, David and Molly are fast asleep. They're dreaming a wonderful dream of Santa and his reindeer flying through the sky to their house. David and Molly had written a letter to Santa with their secret Christmas wish in it. It took them a long time to write the letter. They wanted to make sure they didn't forget anything. When David and Molly had finished their letter, they showed it to their mother. "Now that your letter is done, I'll help you bake Christmas cookies. Then you can leave your letter for Santa next to the cookies, so he will be sure to see," said Mom. After the gooey cookies came out of the oven, Molly and David decorated them. Before the two children went to bed that night, they piled cookies on a big plate. Next to it, they put a glass of cold milk and their letter. "Santa won't be able to miss it," said David. Now the two children are sound asleep in their beds as Santa's journey brings him closer to their house with each stop he makes. At last, Santa arrives at the rooftop of David and Molly's house. The reindeer land so softly on the roof there's not even a bump, just the faint sound of jingle bells. Snug in their beds in the bedroom below, David and Molly dream all night about their very special request. "The chimney looks a little snug," Santa says. Santa has to fit down the narrow chimney with his big bag of toys and a special something tucked in his jacket. "I'm not sure if I can make it," Santa says as he measures the opening. But with a deep breath and a little Christmas magic, he slides down the chimney with hardly a scrape. He manages to fit his big belly, big pack of toys, and all. Santa looks around. "What a nice tree. I bet David and Molly helped to decorate it." Santa looks through his bag for the presents for David and Molly. At the bottom of the bag, he finally finds their presents. Santa puts the presents underneath the tree for David and Molly. Then he thinks to himself, "Goodness, I'm gone many miles tonight and I'm getting a bit hungry. Can't stop yet, though. I've got more to do here before I can have a bit of a rest." Santa arranges the presents, then looks through his great big bag one more time. Santa goes over to the mantel where the stockings are hung. "Now, where are Mrs. Claus's candies?" he thinks. Santa reaches inside his pack for the candies. He fills all the stockings with candy canes, peppermint sticks, cinnamon balls, and other yummy Christmas goodies. Even Mom and Dad get Mrs. Claus candy treats. At last, Santa pats the special something tucked in his jacket and says, "Now for a treat." Santa looks around and sees the plate of cookies and glass of milk sitting on the small table. "Aha," says Santa, "I knew it. Molly and David are such good children. They've left out a big plate of Christmas cookies for me. That's just what I need to finish my deliveries to all the other good little children on my list." But before Santa takes a bite, he goes to the kitchen and brings back a saucer. Then he pours some of the milk into the saucer and sets it on the floor. He unbuttons his jacket and says, "Come on out and have some milk." Santa leans back in a chair and enjoys the yummy cookies. He eats almost all the cookies on the plate and drinks the rest of the milk. Then Santa picks up the letter from Molly and David. Santa's eyes twinkle. "I already know what this says," he chuckled. "I knew it as soon as they wrote the letter." To Santa, the letter begins. "We have been good all year. We have helped our mom and dad a lot. We took care of Mrs. Jasper's cat when she was away. We really liked the cat, so we read books about how to take care of a pet. Will you please bring us a cat for Christmas?" continues the letter. "We will take good care of it and love it. The letter is signed from your friends, Molly and David." Santa picks up the empty saucer and takes it to the kitchen. When he returns, he said, "Did you enjoy your milk, Socks?" Socks answers with a contented purr. Then she settles down to dream sweet cat dreams about a nice boy and girl who will play with her. Santa gives a merry wave with his mittens as he bounds up the chimney. Molly and David wake up Christmas morning and hurry downstairs. "Hooray! Santa bought us a cat just like we wanted." David and Molly look at each other and say, "Let's name our new kitty Socks." The Perfect Tree, written by Suzanne Lawrence. A little pine tree grows in the forest. "The big pine trees are the prettiest trees," the little pine tree says to himself. It's Christmas time in the forest, and all the trees are excited about the season. Their thick branches are covered with blankets of snow, all the branches, except for the little pines, that is. "Who would want such a little tree with such thin branches?" he says. "Now don't you worry," says the biggest spruce in the forest. "Someone will think you're special." "All of you trees are special," chirps a little bird, sitting on a snowy bough. But the little pine isn't so sure, and his branches start to droop a little. "Hey, wait for me," Sarah calls. "I want to pick the tree this year." Her brother David scoops up some soft snow and makes a perfectly round snowball. "Not if I get there first," he shouts. He throws the snowball at a lamppost, then runs as fast as he can through the snow. Dad and Mom follow as they all start out on a snowy walk to the forest. "Remember," says Mom, "it can't be too broad or it won't fit through the door." "And it can't be too tall," says David, "or it will scrape the ceiling." "We'll know the perfect tree when we see it," says Sarah. Soon the family arrives in the middle of the forest. The trees are feeling very nervous. They can't wait to see which tree will be picked. The children race right past all the giant spruce trees. They stop at the little pine. "This one," decides Sarah. "Yeah, it's perfect," says David. The children dance around the little pine. Says Mom, "Not too broad." "And it won't scrape the ceiling," says Sarah. "Looks just right to me," says Dad. "See," said the biggest spruce, "someone thinks you're special already." "They can't mean me," says the little pine. "Look at my thin little branches." Dad examines the tree closely. "The trunk is not very broad. It'll be easy to cut," he says. "Be careful," says Mom. "I'll be very careful," says Dad. "I won't hurt our special tree a bit." Dad begins to saw at the bottom of the little pine's trunk. "What beautiful straight branches," says Mom. "Such a lovely little tree." "See, they don't think your branches are too skinny," says the largest spruce. "They think you're special and beautiful." The little pine's branches still droop. Then the little pine says, "They think I'm special now, but wait till they get me home." Once the little pine is cut, Dad carefully wraps it with twine. "The twine makes sure the branches won't bend and break off," he tells the children. Sarah and Dad lead the way home with their new tree tied securely onto the sled. "Where will we put the tree?" asks David. "In front of the window," says Mom, "so everyone can see our perfect little tree." "The decorations will be so beautiful," Sarah says. "Our tree will be the best one ever." She runs ahead to get out the decorations. I hope the decorations look right on my skinny little branches, the little pine thinks. I don't want to disappoint my new family. At home, Dad and David make a tree stand for the little pine. Dad puts a bowl of water near the bottom of the tree's trunk. What's that for? Asks David. To give the tree a drink, says Dad. We need to take care of our perfect little tree. Sarah and Mom watch as Dad and David get everything ready. Look, says Sarah, people can see our tree from both front windows. You're right, says Mom. Everyone will get to admire our special tree. Oh no, thought the little pine. Everyone will see how silly the decorations look on me. I hope they don't stand outside the window and laugh. Mom gets up from her chair. It's time to start decorating, she says. What can we do? David and Sarah ask. You can start with these, says Mama, scooting some boxes near to the tree. Inside the boxes are bright ornaments of all shapes, sizes, and colors. They're so shiny, says Sarah. We must be very careful. Some of these were Grandma's favorite ornaments, says Mom. We don't want to break any of them. What a lucky tree, David says, to wear such special ornaments. I'll place the angel on top, says Dad. The little pine is worried the angel will not be able to balance on his thin top branches. David and Sarah hang shiny ornaments on the little pine's branches until the boxes are empty. Mom wraps the tree with garlands of red ribbon. The angel Dad placed atop the highest branch proudly watches over everything. The little pine's branches are still strong enough. Isn't this the most beautiful tree you've ever seen? Asks Sarah. It certainly is, says Dad. How lucky we were to find such a special tree, says David. The little pine perks up. Wait, the family isn't disappointed after all. Maybe the big spruce trees were right. The family admires their beautiful tree. David glances out the window. Look, he says, it's snowing. This is the perfect Christmas, says Mom. The little pine stands so very proud and straight. The spruce trees were right, he thinks to himself. Being special doesn't mean being the biggest or the most beautiful. In the forest, I thought that I was a scrawny little pine, but I know that I am truly a special tree. The Gift of the Magi, written by O. Henry. $1.87. That was all. And 67 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved 1, 2, 3 at a time. 3 times Della counted it, $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it. She was beginning to believe that life was made up mostly of sniffles. While the mistress of the house is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the home. It's a furnished flat at $8 a week. In the vestibule below, there's a letter box into which no letter would go, and there was an electric doorbell from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also, there was a small card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 a week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, though, they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking near a fence in the backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She'd been saving every penny she could for months, with this result. $20 a week does not go far. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him, something fine and rare and sterling, something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in the mirrored strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being thin, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining, but her face had lost its color. Rapidly she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now there were 2 possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Della's hair fell about her, shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her waist and made itself almost a garment for her. Then she did it up again nervously and quickly. On went her old brown jacket, on went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with the sparkle still in her eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs. Where she stopped, the sign read, Madame Sofronie, hair goods of all kinds. One flight up, Della ran. Madame Sofronie was large and chilly. She hardly looked to the Sofronie. "Will you buy my hair?" asked Della. "I buy hair," said Madame Sofronie. "Take your hat off, and let's have a sight of the looks of it." Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mask. "Give it to me, quick," Della said. The next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Della was ransacking the store to find Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores. It was a fob chain, simple in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him. Quietness and value applied to both. $21 they took from her, and she hurried home with the change. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling iron and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity and love. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny, close-lying curls that made her look a little bit like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long and carefully. "If Jim doesn't kill me," she said to herself, "he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? What could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was sitting on the back of the stove. It was hot and ready to cook the pork chops that Della had brought the night before. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table nearest the door. Then Della heard Jim's steps on the stairs way down on the first flight. Quickly, she stood up and fixed her hair one last time. Then she turned white for just a moment. Della had a habit of saying little prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened, and Jim stepped in. He looked very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and already burdened with a family. He needed a new coat, and he was without gloves. "Hello, dear," Jim said. Then he looked up at Della. His eyes were fixed upon Della as she stood there. Della tried to smile until she looked into his eyes. There was an expression in them that she could not read. It was not anger, surprise, or disapproval, nor any of the sentiments for which she had been prepared. Jim simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della finally reached out her hand. "Jim, darling, please don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold because I could not have lived through Christmas without giving you a real present, and I certainly didn't have enough money to buy a present." Della looked into Jim's eyes. "It will grow out. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Please say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy." "You've cut off your hair?" asked Jim, as if he had not arrived at that patent fact yet, even after the hardest mental labor. Della held his hand still tighter, warming it with her own. "Cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me just as well anyhow? I'm me without my hair, don't you think?" Jim looked around the room curiously. You say your hair is gone?" he said with an air of idiocy. "You needn't look for it," said Della. "It's sold. I told you, sold and gone, too. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered," she went on with a sudden sweetness, "but nobody could ever count my love for you." Della waited for Jim to speak. He took off his coat without speaking and then turned back to her. Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He grabbed Della in his arms. For a few seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year, what is the difference? A mathematician would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought some very valuable gifts, but this was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat and threw it upon the table. "Make no mistake, Dell, about me. I don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut that could make me like my girl any less." But if you will unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first." White, nimble fingers tore at the string and paper. Della let out an ecstatic scream of joy. Then her voice turned to hysterical tears and wails as she examined the contents of the box, for there lay the combs. They were the combs that Della had worshipped in a Broadway window, beautiful combs with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful vanished hair. They were very expensive combs, and her heart had simply yearned for them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers. But the long tresses that should have adorned them were gone. Jim said, "I can take the combs back and get the money instead." But Della just hugged them to her bosom. "My hair grows so fast, Jim. I'll be able to use them in a few months." "Then you should keep them," Jim said. "They will look beautiful in your hair." And then Della leaped up and cried, "Oh, oh!" Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull, precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it a dandy, Jim?" Della asked. "I hunted all over town to find it. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. "Dell," said Jim, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them a while. They're too nice to use just yet. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now suppose we get dinner ready." The Magi, as you know, who were wise men who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. These wise men invented the art of giving Christmas presents, and here I have related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasure of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who gave gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, they are the wisest. They are the Magi. And that's the end of the book, Merry Christmas, Treasury of Stories and Songs. I'm Elaine Connect, hoping you'll join us for other readings here on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Thank you for listening.
Hello, this is Marian Heatherly, Community Engagement Coordinator for your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes as another year comes to a close. We've been reflecting on what we've accomplished in 2025 and what needs to be done in the new year, and you, our listeners, are at the heart of everything. One of our most important goals in 2026 is to sign up new listeners. More than 100,000 people across the Western New York, Greater Rochester, Southern Ontario region with vision loss, limited mobility, learning disabilities, or other reading challenges would benefit from our programming, but we only know a fraction of them because they're listening online. We love that you're using the service. Could you please take a moment now to let us know you're listening online by calling 716-821-5555 extension 5 and leaving a message, or just send us a quick email to read@nfradioreading.org. It's very important for funding applications and other activities to have an accurate count of listeners. Did you know there's also a survey form on our website for listeners who want to provide feedback on programs or anything else? Please feel free to submit it at any time. The more feedback we receive, the better the service can be. Our website is nfradioreading.org, and the form is available on the bottom of our homepage by clicking on the button that says Listener Feedback. You can also leave a message on our listener line at any time by calling 716-821-5555 extension 5. We'd also appreciate listeners' help spreading the word about radio reading. Our listeners are the best ambassadors of the service because you know us and use us. Do you belong to a group that would like radio reading to come speak? Please give us a call at 716-821-5555 extension 3. Do you have a friend or loved one who would benefit from radio reading? Please have them give us a call at 716-821-5555 extension 3. Do you live in a group home or senior living center where more people would benefit from radio reading? Please give us a call at 716-821-5555 extension 3. Another great way to support the radio reading service you love is to purchase one of our Broadcasters Eat Their Words cookbooks. This hardcover keepsake has no pictures to take up space, just 80 full pages of easy-to-follow recipes and helpful hints from local broadcasters, national chefs, and many of our volunteer readers to try over the holidays or give as a gift to family or friends. It's only $25 plus shipping and available by calling, you guessed it, that phone number again is 716-821-5555 extension 3. You can visit our website at nfradioreading.org and purchase it there, or save the shipping and pick up a copy at our 1199 Harlem Road Studios in Cheektowaga. We'd be happy for the visit. Well, I've talked a lot. That's me, very passionate about radio reading, but don't worry, we'll be airing this promo regularly through the end of the year if you missed any information. The most important message we want to share this holiday season is thank you to all of our listeners who have supported radio reading in 2025. By listening, by making a donation, by attending an event, by spreading the word about us, by connecting a new listener with us. You're incredibly important to us as we review our accomplishments of the past year and plan for the future, so we can keep our programming free for everyone who needs it and reach more people who would benefit. On behalf of the entire team at Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, may the joys of the holiday season be with you all.
Coming up next at the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, episode number 8 of You Belong Here by Megan Miranda. Following that at 3 o'clock is the New Yorker, and at 4 o'clock we have A Christmas Carol, read by Sir Patrick Stewart. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,